Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping headfirst into Robert Sapolsky's masterpiece, Behave, and we're going to unpack the biology of humans at our absolute best and our absolute worst. You know, this quote from Nobel laureate and Holocaust survivor Elie Wiesel really sets the stage for everything we're about to talk about. The biology of intense love and intense hate, it's actually shockingly similar. Indifference? That's the real opposite. I mean, what makes us do the things we do? Answering that question, well, it's one of the biggest challenges there is, right? It's about understanding the whole human story, from the absolute horrific to the truly heroic. Okay, let's dive in. So, how do we even begin to tackle a question that huge? Well, according to Sapolsky, the very first step is to realize that any single behavior has a ton of different causes. And to see them clearly, we have to break one really bad habit, our habit of thinking in simple, separate categories. Sapolsky uses this old joke to point out a massive problem in how we try to explain things. We love to put every cause in its own little bucket. You've got the genetics bucket over here, the childhood bucket over there, the brain chemistry bucket somewhere else. But here's the thing. Those buckets, they're an illusion. And this might be the most important idea in the whole book. Any single explanation for a behavior is really just the final product of all the things that came before it. It's all one connected chain of events. So let's do this. Let's become behavioral detectives. We're going to start just 1 second before an action happens, and then we're going to rewind the tape, peeling back the layers of time to see what led to that one single moment. All right, our investigation starts just moments before the big event. Let's hit that rewind button and look at the immediate stuff. What's happening in our brains and our bodies in the seconds, hours, and days just before? So 1 second before you do something, there's a battle raging in your brain. You have the amygdala, this ancient emotional part, and it's screaming an automatic command: fight, flee. Then you have the frontal cortex, kind of like your brain's CEO, and it's saying, whoa, hold on, let's think about the consequences here. Now we get to hormones, and this is where things get really interesting, because it kind of flips the script on what most of us learned. Hormones aren't these puppet masters that cause us to act. Think of them more like amplifiers. They just turn up the volume on the music that's already playing in your head. Take testosterone, for example. It doesn't just create aggression out of nowhere. No. It just makes you more sensitive to the triggers for aggression that are already there. Look at this. The best predictor of future violence isn't someone's testosterone level. It's their past history of aggression. The hormone just helps what's already there happen. And what about oxytocin, the so-called cuddle hormone? Well, it turns out it has a dark side. It absolutely makes us more trusting, more cooperative. But here's the catch, only toward our in-group, our us. When it comes to an out-group, them, oxytocin can actually ramp up suspicion and xenophobia. It makes us better at loving us and potentially better at hating them.
Okay, let's rewind the tape way further now. Because the stage for our behavior wasn't just set a few days ago. No, it's been under construction for years, even millennia, shaped by our development, our genes, and our cultures. Think about the teenage brain. It's like a car with a brand new, super-powered engine. That's the emotional reward-seeking part, and it's just revving at full throttle. But the brakes, the part of the brain that's in charge of impulse control, the frontal cortex, that part's still being built, and it won't be fully installed until our mid-20s. And that, well, that explains a lot, doesn't it? Now let's talk genes. And this is so crucial. Genes are not destiny. They're more like a recipe than a blueprint. For instance, there's this thing people call the warrior gene, a version of a gene called MAOA that's been linked to aggression. But if you have that gene and grow up in a supportive, loving environment, its effect is pretty much zero. But you take that exact same gene and you combine it with a childhood full of abuse and trauma, the risk for violent behavior in adulthood skyrockets. This is the perfect example of a gene-environment interaction. The gene itself doesn't decide the story. Its effect depends completely on the world it finds itself in. And if we zoom out even further, you can see forces we almost never think about. For example, cultures that grew up around collective rice farming tend to value the group very differently from cultures that grew up around individualist animal herding. Even the landscape our ancestors lived in, a vast desert versus a dense rainforest, can be linked to the kinds of gods they worshipped. These ancient forces are still echoing in our behaviors today.
So, after this journey all the way back through time, from a single second to millions of years, where does that leave us? What's the biggest solution to this whole mystery of human behavior? Well, we've seen that any one behavior is really the result of this incredible waterfall of influences. It's the neurobiology of a single second, sitting on top of the hormones from yesterday, built on the brain wiring from your childhood, all shaped by the genes and culture from centuries ago. So the biggest takeaway here is that we have to escape that bucket thinking we talked about at the start. The biology of who we are is completely inseparable from the environment it happens in. The single most important word in this entire explainer: context. Context is everything. And when you really start to think this way, it doesn't just explain behavior. It forces us to ask some really profound, even uncomfortable questions. If every action is the result of this immense web of causes, so many of them outside of our control, what does that mean for ideas like free will, for responsibility? What does it truly mean to be human?